The first rays of dawn broke through the thick clouds hanging over Los Angeles as Marcus Chen pushed open the glass door of Rose's Diner. The familiar chime above the entrance announced their arrival, a sound that had become comforting over the past year. His 6-year-old daughter Emma clung to his hand, her small fingers wrapped tightly around his calloused palm. She wore a yellow dress that her mother had bought her 2 Christmases ago, now slightly faded but still her favorite. Marcus looked like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. His black hair was streaked with premature gray, his face lined with exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure, and his clothes, though clean, were worn thin from countless washes. The diner was a relic from another era, with its checkered floor tiles, red vinyl booths, and a long counter lined with chrome-top stools. Neon signs advertising pie and coffee flickered in the windows, casting a warm glow against the cool morning. The smell of brewing coffee, mixed with bacon grease and fresh bread, created an aroma that spoke of simple comfort and routine. For Marcus and Emma, this place had become their Saturday morning ritual, a small slice of normalcy in a life that had been shattered by tragedy. They made their way to their usual booth near the window, where Emma could watch the occasional car pass by on the still quiet street. Marcus helped her climb onto the cracked vinyl seat before sliding in across from her. From his jacket pocket, he produced a small coloring book with a unicorn on the cover, and a Ziploc bag filled with crayons of various lengths. Emma's face brightened immediately, her small hands reaching for the bag with eager anticipation. She dumped the crayons onto the table, selecting a purple one with the seriousness of an artist choosing their medium. Marcus watched her for a long moment, his dark eyes soft with a love so profound it was almost painful. She looked so much like her mother, from the shape of her eyes to the way she concentrated when she colored, her tongue poking slightly out of the corner of her mouth. Sarah had done that too. The memory hit him like it always did, a sharp pain in his chest that never quite went away, just dulled to a constant ache. Betty Martinez appeared beside their table, her presence announced by the gentle clink of the coffee pot she carried. She had been waitressing at Rose's for 23 years and had seen every kind of person walk through those doors. But there was something about Marcus and Emma that had touched her heart. She had watched them come in every Saturday for the past 14 months, had seen the grief slowly transform into something more manageable, though never truly gone. "Morning, Marcus." "Morning, sweet Emma," Betty said, her voice carrying the warmth of genuine affection. She poured coffee into Marcus's cup without asking, knowing exactly how he took it: black, strong, and hot enough to scald. "Morning, Betty," Marcus replied, his voice gravelly from lack of sleep. He had worked the night shift at the office building downtown, vacuuming floors and emptying trash cans from midnight until 6 in the morning. "And what can I get for my favorite little artist this morning?" Betty asked, bending down to Emma's level. Emma looked up, her brown eyes sparkling. "Chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream, please. And can I have strawberries on top?" Betty glanced at Marcus, who hesitated. Strawberries meant an extra $2. $2 he had budgeted for gas to get to his afternoon delivery job. But seeing the hope in his daughter's eyes, he nodded. "Strawberries sound perfect, sweetheart. Coming right up. And for you, Marcus?" "The usual. Just scrambled eggs and toast, thanks, Betty." As Betty walked away, Marcus pulled out his phone, checking the time and mentally calculating his day. He had 3 hours before he needed to start his grocery delivery shift, which gave him just enough time to get Emma to her friends' house for a birthday party and maybe grab 30 minutes of sleep in the parking lot before work. It was exhausting, relentless, but it was all for her. Everything was for her. The peaceful morning shattered when the door burst open with enough force to make the chime clang harshly. 3 men strutted in, their presence immediately commanding attention in the worst possible way. The leader was Derek Sullivan, though everyone who knew him called him Sully, usually while keeping their distance. He was built like a bulldog, all thick muscle and aggression, with a shaved head that gleamed under the diner's fluorescent lights. His face was marked with old scars, souvenirs from bar fights and bad decisions. He wore a leather jacket despite the warm morning, the back emblazoned with a skull and crossbones. His companions were equally intimidating. Tony Russo was thin and wiry, with a scar running from his left ear to his chin, a reminder of a knife fight he'd lost but survived. His eyes were cold and calculating, always looking for an angle, always searching for weakness. The third man, called Brick for obvious reasons, was massive, 6 feet 5 inches of solid muscle packed into a frame that seemed too large for the diner's doorway. His knuckles were scarred and calloused, the hands of someone who settled arguments with violence. They chose a booth 3 down from Marcus and Emma, their voices immediately filling the quiet space with crude jokes and loud laughter. Sully sprawled across his seat like he owned the place, his boots up on the opposite bench. Other customers glanced their way, nervously before quickly returning to their meals, heads down, hoping to be ignored. Marcus recognized the type immediately. Predators. Men who derived pleasure from others' fear, who measured their worth by how much they could diminish those around them. In his years with lap SWAT, he had dealt with countless men like these, bullies who mistook cruelty for strength. He gently reached across the table and touched Emma's hand. "Keep coloring, sweetheart," he said softly. "Don't pay attention to the loud men." Emma nodded, but her eyes kept darting toward the other booth, her small face showing confusion at the harsh laughter and cursing that punctuated their conversation. Betty brought their food, setting down Emma's pancakes with a flourish that made the little girl gasp with delight. The stack was generous, drowning in syrup with a mountain of whipped cream and fresh strawberries arranged on top like a crown. Marcus's eggs and toast looked humble by comparison, but he smiled at the sight. Betty had added an extra slice of toast and a small cup of fruit, her way of taking care of him without making him feel like he was accepting charity. Marcus began cutting Emma's pancakes into bite-sized pieces, a ritual they performed every Saturday. He blew on each piece to cool it, testing it against his lip before placing it on her plate. Emma waited patiently, knowing the routine, trusting her father completely. As he handed her the fork, she leaned across the table and planted a syrup-sticky kiss on his cheek. "Thank you, Daddy. You're the best daddy in the whole world." For a moment, the exhaustion lifted. For a moment, every sleepless night, every aching muscle, every sacrifice was worth it. "You're my whole world, Emma Bear," he whispered back. That's when Sully noticed them. His predatory gaze swept across the diner and landed on Marcus, with the precision of a shark sensing blood in the water. Something about the way Marcus sat, quiet, humble, worn down, triggered something in Sully. Maybe it was boredom. Maybe it was the need to assert dominance. Or maybe it was simply the nature of a man who had never learned there was strength in gentleness. "Hey, Tony, Brick, check this out," Sully said loudly enough for the entire diner to hear. He stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor, and sauntered toward Marcus's booth. His boots hit the floor with deliberate heaviness, each step an announcement of his approach. Marcus felt them coming before he saw them. Years of tactical training had honed his awareness to a razor's edge. He set down his fork carefully, his movements controlled, and looked up as the 3 men formed a semicircle around their booth, blocking the morning light from the window. Sully looked down at Marcus with undisguised contempt. His lips curled into a sneer that revealed yellowed teeth. He placed both hands on the table and leaned in, invading their space with practiced intimidation. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" Sully's voice dripped with mock concern. "Looks like somebody had a rough night. Or maybe that's just your face. Hard to tell with guys like you." Marcus held his gaze without responding, his dark eyes calm and unreadable. Emma stopped eating, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth, her small body tensing with fear she didn't fully understand. Tony laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "I think the bum's trying to play tough." Sully, look at him, sitting there in those raggedy clothes. Probably hasn't had a real job in years. Just leeching off welfare, bringing his kid to places like this. Actually, Brick added with a cruel grin, probably not even his kid. Probably some crackhead's baby he's using to score sympathy money from people. The other customers in the diner had gone completely silent. Miguel Rodriguez, the cook, had stopped working and was watching through the service window. His weathered face creased with concern. Betty stood behind the counter, her hand hovering near the phone, trying to decide if she should call the police. Marcus took a slow breath, his training kicking in. Assess the threat. Calculate options. Protect the innocent. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but clear. We are just trying to have breakfast. Please leave us alone. Sully's eyes widened in exaggerated surprise. Oh, he speaks. And so polite. Tell me something, friend. What's your story? Why finally get smart and leave you? Is that why you're dressed like you pulled your clothes out of a dumpster? Can't even afford decent shoes for yourself. But you bring a kid in here like you belong. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Emma had started to cry, silent tears rolling down her cheeks as she looked at her father with confused, frightened eyes. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood the tone, the cruelty, the threat. Daddy, she whispered, her voice small and scared. Marcus reached across and gently squeezed her hand, his touch reassuring despite the tension in his body. When he looked back at Sully, there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a warning, clear as a spoken word. My wife died, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4. 14 months ago. I held her hand while she took her last breath. I promised her I would take care of our daughter, that I would make sure Emma had everything she needed, that she would grow up knowing she was loved. So that's what I do. I work 3 jobs. I sleep 4 hours a night if I'm lucky. Every dollar I make goes to rent, food, and making sure my daughter has the childhood her mother wanted for her. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time. Please leave us alone so we can finish our breakfast. For a heartbeat, something flickered across Sully's face, perhaps a flash of humanity, a moment of recognition that he had crossed a line. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by something darker and more vicious. The truth was, Sully's own father had walked out when he was 8, and somewhere deep in his twisted psyche, seeing a devoted father triggered a rage he couldn't articulate. Cancer, huh? Sully leaned closer, his breath reeking of stale beer and cigarettes. That's real sad. Real tragic. But you know what I think? I think maybe she saw what a pathetic loser you were and just gave up. Maybe dying was easier than watching you fail at life every single day. Ever think about that? The words hung in the air like poison gas. Emma began to sob openly now, her small shoulders shaking. Several customers gasped audibly. Betty dropped the coffee pot she was holding, the glass shattering on the floor behind the counter. Marcus closed his eyes. In that moment, 1,000 memories flashed through his mind. Sarah in her hospital bed, her once beautiful hair gone from chemotherapy, her body ravaged by disease, but her eyes still full of love. Her final words, promise me you'll be strong for her. Promise me you'll show her what a good man looks like. He had promised. He had sworn on everything he held sacred. When Marcus opened his eyes, they had changed. The exhaustion was still there, but beneath it was something else. Entirely, something. Cold and precise and absolutely lethal. Anyone who had served in tactical operations would have recognized that look. It was the look of a warrior, of someone who had been to dark places and come back, of someone who knew exactly how much damage they could do and had chosen. Restraint until that choice was no longer viable. Step back. Marcus's voice was different now, stripped of all warmth, each word falling like a hammer blow. Instead of heeding the warning, Sully laughed and reached out to shove Marcus's shoulder, his meaty hand moving fast and aggressive, intending to humiliate, to prove dominance. What happened next would be talked about in Rose's diner for years to come. Marcus moved like liquid lightning. His hand shot up, intercepting Sully's wrist mid-motion with a grip that made the bigger man's eyes widen in shock. Before Sully could even process what was happening, Marcus had twisted the arm in a joint lock that sent pain, shooting up to Sully's shoulder. In the same fluid motion, Marcus rose from his seat, his body uncoiling with the precision of a trained fighter. He swept Sully's legs out from under him using a technique called a leg sweep takedown, standard SWAT, defensive tactics. Sully crashed to the floor, with a thunderous impact that made the dishes rattle on nearby tables. Tony reacted on instinct, throwing a wild right hook aimed at Marcus's head. Marcus didn't even look rushed. He ducked under the punch with minimal movement, letting Tony's momentum carry him off balance. Marcus caught the man's arm, controlled his center of gravity, and used a simple hip throw to send Tony sprawling into an empty booth. The vinyl seat cushion split under the impact. Brick was bigger, stronger, but crucially, slower. He came at Marcus like a charging bull, his massive fists drawn back for devastating punches. Marcus waited, perfectly still, until Brick committed to his attack. Then he moved. He sidestepped the first punch by inches, deflected the second with a forearm block that would have broken a normal person's arm, and delivered a precise strike to Brick's solar plexus, the cluster of nerves, just below the sternum. Brick's eyes bulged. All the air left his lungs in an explosive gasp. His massive body folded forward, and Marcus helped him to the ground with controlled force, ensuring he didn't hit his head on the way down. The entire sequence had taken less than 8 seconds. 3 violent men, all larger and supposedly more dangerous than the quiet father in worn clothes, were now on the floor or draped over furniture, groaning in pain and gasping for air. Marcus stood in the center of the diner, not even breathing hard, his stance relaxed but ready, like a wolf that had just reminded everyone why they shouldn't be mistaken for dogs. The diner was absolutely silent, except for Emma's quiet sobbing and their men's labored breathing. Marcus turned back to his daughter, his expression immediately softening. He slid back into the booth, picked up his napkin, and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "It's okay, baby girl. Daddy's here. You're safe. Everything's okay now." Sully struggled to his knees, clutching his wrist, which was already swelling and would later be diagnosed as a severe sprain. His face was pale, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. He looked up at Marcus with something between fear and disbelief. Marcus looked down at him, and when he spoke, his voice carried through the silent diner with the weight of absolute authority. "I spent 12 years with the Los Angeles Police Department's SWAT team." Marcus said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather. "I was a tactical operator, which means I trained every single day to handle the worst situations imaginable. I've been in firefights where bullets were coming through walls. I've breached doors not knowing if there was someone on the other side with a shotgun. I've talked armed suspects into surrendering and carried wounded officers out of kill zones. I've seen things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your life." He paused, making sure Sully was listening, that all of them were listening. "When my wife was diagnosed, I had a choice. I could stay in SWAT, good pay, benefits, a career I'd built over a decade, or I could be there for her, for every treatment, every bad day, every moment she had left. I chose her. I chose being a husband. Then I chose being a full-time father. I left a job I loved because my family needed me more." Marcus's voice didn't rise, didn't carry anger, just stated facts with the weight of lived truth. "I work at Anderson Office Complex from midnight to 6 in the morning, cleaning bathrooms and vacuuming conference rooms. I deliver groceries for Fresh Direct from 8 until 4. I do security at Memorial Hospital on weekends. I make $19,000 a year, which is barely enough to cover rent and food. My car is a 1997 Honda Civic with 240,000 miles on it. The check engine light has been on for 2 years, and I just ignore it. I sleep on a couch that I pulled out of a dumpster. My daughter has the bedroom. She has new shoes every 6 months, even if it means I wear the same pair until they fall apart. She has birthday parties with her friends. She has coloring books and toys. She has a life that her mother wanted for her." Tony had pulled himself up to sitting position, his face bruised from impact. Brick was still on his knees, one hand on a table, trying to catch his breath. The other customers watched in absolute silence, many with tears in their eyes. "I could have killed all 3 of you," Marcus continued, his voice still calm, still measured. "Not hurt, not injured, killed. I know 17 different ways to stop a human. Heart with my bare hands. I know where to strike to collapse a windpipe, to rupture an organ, to cause a brain hemorrhage. That's what I was trained to do when necessary. But I didn't. Do you know why? Sully shook his head slightly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Because my daughter is watching. Because I made a promise to her mother that I would be the kind of man worth looking up to. Because strength isn't about hurting people weaker than you. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. That's what a real man does. That's what a real father does. You three, you're just bullies. And bullies are the weakest people on earth because you measure your worth by how much you can tear others down. Marcus reached into his wallet and pulled out a photograph, placing it on the table where Sully could see it. It showed a beautiful woman with long dark hair and kind eyes, standing next to a younger Marcus in his SWAT uniform, both of them beaming at the camera. This was Sarah, my wife, the strongest person I ever knew. She fought that cancer with more courage than you three will ever possess in your entire lives. She never complained, never felt sorry for herself, and even at the end, she was worried about me and Emma, not herself. So when you say she gave up or that she wanted to escape me, you're not just insulting me, you're disrespecting a woman who showed more strength in her last month than you've shown in your entire worthless existence. A single tear rolled down Marcus's cheek, but his voice remained steady. I don't need your apology. I don't want it. What I want is for you to leave this diner, to look in the mirror tonight, and to ask yourselves what kind of men you want to be. Because right now you're nothing. Sully looked at the photograph, then at Emma, then back at Marcus. For the first time in his miserable life, Derek Sullivan felt genuine shame. It burned in his chest like acid, choking him more effectively than any physical technique Marcus could have used. He saw himself clearly, a pathetic bully who attacked a grieving father and terrorized a 6-year-old girl to feel powerful. He saw what his own father had been, the cycle of cruelty he had perpetuated without thought. Sully's voice cracked. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Marcus picked up the photograph and put it back in his wallet. I told you I don't want your apology. I want you to leave. Betty had already called the police. 2 officers arrived within minutes, Officer James Thornton and Officer Maria Santos. When they walked in, they saw 3 rough-looking men struggling to stand and a quiet man in worn clothes sitting with his daughter. Betty quickly explained what had happened, her words tumbling over each other in her rush to tell the story. Other customers chimed in, all of them praising Marcus, all of them condemning the 3 bullies. Officer Thornton approached Marcus's table, recognizing him immediately. Marcus Chen, is that you? Marcus looked up, a tired smile crossing his face. Hey, James. It's been a while. Holy hell, it has. Santos, this is Marcus Chen. He trained me when I first made SWAT. Best tactical operator I ever worked with. Thornton turned to Sully and his friends, his expression hardening. You 3 idiots attacked Marcus Chen? Do you have any idea how lucky you are to be walking right now? Officer Santos was already getting statements from the other customers. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple witnesses confirmed that Sully and his friends had initiated the confrontation, had made threats, and had been the first to use physical force. Marcus had only defended himself. We are pressing charges, Betty announced firmly. Assault, harassment, disturbing the peace, terrorizing a child. I want them arrested. Sully didn't resist when Thornton pulled his arms behind his back to cuff him. None of them did. They were loaded into the patrol car, their morning of planned intimidation, turning into something far worse: criminal records, potential jail time, and the knowledge that they had attacked a man who could have destroyed them but chose mercy instead. As the police car pulled away, Miguel came out from the kitchen carrying 2 plates. He set them down in front of Marcus and Emma, fresh pancakes for Emma, and a full breakfast for Marcus: eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. On the house, Miguel said firmly when Marcus started to protest. Both meals. And Marcus, you're a good man, the best kind of man. Other customers came by throughout the next hour. An older gentleman in a business suit pressed a $100 bill into Marcus's hand, refusing to take it back despite Marcus's protests. "For your daughter," the man said simply. "My father was like you. I turned out okay because of men like him. Like you." A young mother with 2 children stopped by the table. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank you for showing my kids what real strength looks like. They need to see that." Emma finished her second helping of pancakes, the earlier trauma already beginning to fade with the resilience of childhood. She returned to her coloring, adding purple butterflies to her picture. Marcus watched her, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he was carrying. Betty sat down in the booth next to Emma, something she never did during her shift. "Marcus, I've been thinking. My son owns a construction company. They're looking for a site supervisor. It's day work, good pay, benefits, real benefits, including health insurance. I told him about you last month, and he said if you're interested, the job is yours. No interview needed. Just my word is enough." Marcus stared at her, hardly daring to believe it. "Betty, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll take it. Say you'll stop killing yourself working 3 jobs. Sarah wouldn't want this for you, Marcus. You know she wouldn't." Marcus felt tears building, but this time they were different. "Yes. God, yes. Thank you, Betty. Thank you so much." The job would start the following Monday. Day shift, $45,000 a year, full benefits. It meant Emma could go to a better school. It meant he could sleep at night. It meant they could move to a bigger apartment where he didn't have to sleep on a broken couch. It meant medical insurance, dental, vision, things he hadn't had in over a year. As they left the diner 2 hours later, the morning sun had burned away the clouds, leaving a clear blue sky. Emma held her father's hand, skipping alongside him, chattering about her friend's birthday party and the games they would play. Marcus listened, really listened, not distracted by exhaustion or worry for the first time in months. Before getting in the car, Emma tugged his hand. "Daddy, are you a superhero?" Marcus crouched down to her level, looking into those brown eyes that were Sarah's legacy. "No, baby, I'm not a superhero. I'm just your dad. And being your dad is the greatest thing I'll ever be. I think daddies are better than superheroes anyway." Emma declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Superheroes have to help everybody. But you just help me. That makes you more special." Marcus pulled her into a tight hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling her small arms wrap around his neck. In that moment, everything, every sleepless night, every aching muscle, every sacrifice, made perfect sense. 3 months later, Marcus stood in front of a construction site, wearing a hard hat and safety vest, clipboard in hand. He had gained back the weight he'd lost. The dark circles under his eyes had faded, and there was a confidence in his bearing that had been missing. Emma was enrolled in a good school, making friends, thriving. They had moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood. Marcus even slept in a real bed now. He kept Sarah's photograph on his nightstand, talking to it every night, telling her about their daughter, about their life, promising he was keeping his word. And at Rose's diner, Betty had framed a newspaper article about the incident. It hung behind the counter where everyone could see it. The headline read, "Former SWAT officer defends. Daughter from bullies, shows. True meaning of strength." Underneath, someone had written in marker, "Real heroes don't wear capes. They wear old shoes and sacrifice everything for their kids." Sully served 90 days in county jail for assault. When he got out, he started attending anger management therapy and eventually volunteered at a youth center, trying to steer kids away from the path he had taken. He never forgot the lesson Marcus taught him, that true strength comes from restraint, from choosing mercy when you could choose violence, from building up instead of tearing down. Tony went back to school, got his GED, and started working as a mechanic. Brick got sober and joined a gym, channeling his anger into productive training rather than destructive violence. And every Saturday morning, without fail, Marcus and Emma walked into Rose's diner. They sat in their booth by the window. Emma colored while Marcus sipped his coffee. Betty brought them their regular orders. Miguel waved from the kitchen. And for 1 hour every week. The world was exactly as it should be, a father and daughter sharing breakfast, surrounded by people who cared, living a life that honored the memory of a woman, who had taught them both that love is the strongest force in the universe. Because in the end, that was the real story. Not about a warrior who defended his child, though he did. Not about bullies who learned a harsh lesson, though they did. But about a man who had lost everything and chose to keep going, who worked himself to exhaustion out of love, who showed his daughter every single day what true strength looked like. And Emma would grow up remembering not the violence of that morning, but the gentle way her father cut her pancakes, the soft kisses he gave her forehead, the quiet strength in his voice when he said she was his whole world. She would grow up knowing that real heroes don't defeat villains. They show up. Every day. They keep promises. And they love unconditionally even when the world tries to break them. That was Marcus Chen's real victory. Not the 8 seconds it took to defeat 3 bullies, but the 8,000 days he would spend being the father Sarah had known he could be, the father Emma deserved, the father who proved that the strongest people are those who choose love over hate, mercy over revenge, and presence over absence. And every night, when he tucked Emma into bed, he would whisper the same words, "Mommy loved you so much, and so do I. Always and forever." Always and forever, Emma would whisper back, her small hand in his, both of them carrying Sarah's memory forward into a future filled with hope, healing, and the unbreakable bond between a father and his daughter. That was the ending that mattered. That was the victory worth celebrating. Not violence, but love. Not revenge, but redemption. Not anger, but grace. And in that truth, Marcus Chen found peace.